Hello, family. This is African Esquire, and I'm here with the Federation of African Liberation. We also have a guest here, Brother Cato, who was a guest to the part of the organization and a guest to this live stream. So before we get started on this live stream, let's introduce ourselves. So as you know, I'm the creator of this channel, African Esquire. Kofi, you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Kofi Newton. I do the social media. I do the pretty much do all the content for the Federation of African Liberation, and I try to reach out to, people who have like-minded interests in talking about the continent. And it's good to be here. Welcome, everyone.
Frank, do you want to introduce yourself? Frank, your mic's muted. Frank, your mic's muted. Okay, Frank's not hearing me yet. We'll go to Cato. You want to introduce yourself while Frank unmutes his mic?
Okay, can you hear me? All right, my name is Cato Yancey. I'm very interested in Africa and Black people across the diaspora, and I go to a lot of YouTube, and I've come across quite a few people that I liked, and then I kind of backed away from them to some degree. But content that from your program that you put on YouTube, I was just in awe of, and I was like, you know what? I love what they're doing over there, so I'm gonna back them. So basically, that's who I am. So that's why I decided just to stick with you guys.
Thank you, brother.
You're welcome.
And welcome. And Frank, I see you unmuted your mic. You want to?
Yeah. My name is Frank Mauba, member of FAL. I am I serve on the Ministry of Mental Health for African Youth Children.
So, we comprise the organization Federation of African Liberation. This is our Soapbox live stream where we get to talk to the people. Just moving forward, we decided that we wanted to allow members to actually get involved with the live stream. So if you're a member of FAL, you can send us an email and just let us know that you'd like to be on the next live stream, and we'll try to schedule with you. And, the only real requirement is that you be a Pan-Africanist, you subscribe to Pan-Africanist beliefs. But also, we do have a $10 monthly fee just for membership fees. But other than that, that's really the bulk of our requirements. In addition, for an announcement for FAL, we as an organization will be evolving. Hopefully in the summer of 2020, we like to have elections for actual leadership positions such as president, a spokesperson, chairman. So we want to move the organization in a more direct direction. So if you are someone who is a leader, or someone who's a Pan-Africanist, someone who is very avid about the cause, we encourage you to just be seen and let us know that you are a member of FAL and that you want to be more involved. And we will work with you so that by the time that we do make that transition, we can have a good understanding of who you are, and our membership will have a good understanding of who you are. Lastly, we have a new FAL YouTube channel. As I've said in previous live streams, after probably a few months, we're going to stop doing the live streams on African Esquire platform and start doing them on the Federation of African Liberation YouTube channel. So I'm going to post that link for everyone. So that's all my announcements. And so let's get into the first topic. So I started off talking on my channel this week about Kamala Harris. And for those of you who don't know, she has declared herself a runner for the presidency. She wants to go against Trump. She wants to have the Democratic nomination. A lot has come out about her. And a lot, as I said in the video I did previously, a lot of Black people have been vocal and more in tune with what's going on with the political scape. So first of all, what is everyone's, what is your impression of Kamala Harris? And I just want to remind everyone, when you're not talking, to mute your mic so that the camera doesn't switch. But what is your impression of Kamala Harris?
Yeah, my first impression of her, you know, I didn't really get a chance to like have a first impression. I never really knew who she was until you know, other like videographers, other vloggers, you know, started, you know, talking about her, and they have a lot of receipts on her. She's apparently she's like a district attorney. She put a lot of, you know, people in jail, and she's responsible for a lot of you know, mass incarceration of Black people in the California area, in the LA County, I believe. And she has a father who is Jamaican, but he doesn't ever identify as being a Black Jamaican. Apparently they're of you know, Indian, you know, descent. That migrated are the Indians that were taken to Jamaica, and it seems like they kind of fall in line with you know, white supremacy, and you know, that's my first impression of her. And when I've seen her, like her videos of listening to like R&B music, of listening to rap music, and like repping the Wakanda sign, it just seems like she's kind of like she's just trying to get the Black vote. And it's crazy because I didn't know the Black vote was so important, and now I'm starting to pay attention like to our numbers out there, and I think this is all coming from, you know, our influence in this country, you know, with the celebrities and with just culture. And it seems like wherever we're going, where it seems like wherever we're going in a political spectrum, that's where the entire nation's gonna go, because they kind of trust our like honest, you know, they trust our honesty, and how brutally honest we are with this country. And now I'm starting to see just how important the Black vote is. I never thought voting as a Black person was so important, and you know, I'm starting to pay attention now. And if we could even stop someone from, you know, gaining entry into the office, you know, we could pretty much have an influence in that.
Yeah,
you
brought up a good point, because it seems like the Black vote legitimizes the Democratic nominees, that it legitimizes a candidate. So we know that the Black vote was very important for Hillary Clinton, which is why, although, you know, we might not be as numerical as the Latino vote, we do know that she was definitely after the Black vote, because a part of that would kind of legitimize her platform, you know. And I do see kind of a ripple effect, because Black people have been very vocal online about her past as a prosecutor. And what you see is that now that this is out, you see a lot of other liberals, you know, now questioning her and saying, is this a candidate that's probably going to be someone who we want to, you know, back necessarily if they're not going to get the Black vote? So, Frank, how about you? What is your impression of Kamala?
I mean, my impression of her, like when I first heard the story, I wanted to like do some research, little bit information about her, but I did not really get a chance to, you know, follow her history, like, you know, what she did in the past and what she had done for Black people in general. But just from listening to Kofi, a brief summary that he have given, regarding her past behavior towards Black people, especially incarcerating Black people, putting Black people in the prison system on a plantation. This goes to say that, ones who have never sympathized with you, one who have never grieved with you, will never love you, no matter what. But I have come to a situation where she's trying to run for one of the higher office in the country, and where she need Black votes, or where she need Black voice or Black voices, or where she need Black attention, and she's not coming out. I think I should love Black people. So this come to mind that of our political platform, where we ought to create a platform where any candidate for that matter, and you want to run for office or for offices, and you want to get Black votes, we need to get your agenda, and we also need to do thorough investigation of your past towards Black people life. Even if your past have been horrible, and you come out with your agenda currently that you think is an agenda that will favor Black people, but due to your past, we don't trust you because you never sympathize with us, or you never agree with us, so you will never love us. So that's my intake. My intake here is, due to her past, she shouldn't come asking for Black people vote. She shouldn't win our vote. She wasn't there for us. I think that's just my intake about her. Not because we see her now listening to Black music, or to Black entertaining and all of those things, and we think that she's dead for all. They are all hypocrites. That's how I call it. They are hypocrites because they need our vote, they need our attention, and they are not pretending coming that they love Black people when they have those horrible history against Black people or African people. So that just go to say that ones who have never sympathized with you will never be there for you, or will never love you. So we should have that in the back of our mind. Like, for example, I was just watching that movie show where the British House of Law sat down there and said they should go and recolonize Zimbabwe so that they can make Zimbabwe a better place. And they laugh about it. So when we seeing these people coming out of all those horrible history against us, and now coming to say they need Black vote, it's like they're laughing out that we can't land. So no matter what happened, no matter how horrible they do things against us, once they need us and they come to us, pretending to us, laughing, showing all those white teeth, we're going to forget about everything and put her into power. So my intake here is, we shouldn't get her into power. We shouldn't support her.
Okay. Brother Cato, what are your thoughts on Kamala?
Okay, let me turn my mic on here. Can you hear me now? Okay. Let's look at how the media is portraying her. And when you look at it from that aspect, right, anyone that the media puts out front, I think we all have to take a close look at and examine. As far as she's concerned, she's married to a white man. So that should cause some pause right there. We know that she worked for the justice system. We know that she was a prosecutor, I believe. And from what I understand, like everyone else is saying, she actually put a lot of people away in prison, right, going along with the system, never tried to make any real changes, right, as far as the 3 strikes are concerned within the system that you get from Bill Clinton. And so, but she's no different from a Cory Booker here in New Jersey. I'm sure like you may know a little more about Cory Booker than I do. Can you hear me? Yeah, you may know a little more about.
Just let you know your camera's off though, but yeah, we hear you.
Okay. Oh, my camera's off. Okay, so you may know a little more about Cory Booker than I do because I'm in South Jersey. He's more North Jersey, right? He's from up North Jersey. But anytime we get these Black leaders, right, they never really have a real agenda for the Black community. Or should I say, maybe even to another degree, we never come together as a block and say what our demands are, right? when we say we want jobs in the Black community, how do we get jobs? How do we not just jobs, but corporations, bring them back instead of what they refer to as white flight, white corporations following white people outside of Black communities, right? So we need corporations to stay in. Like, for example, here in South Jersey, they have CVS, which is the distribution center, but they have them in North Jersey too, in New York, right? So they have CVS, right? So they pay very decent, like, for people that have no higher education. So you have these mainly majority white people that are going to work at a CVS in the distribution center, and it's putting them in a so-called middle-class status when intellectually they're really not, right? But that's, so we have to look at, right, all these things and all these politicians, they're just that because they follow the system, right? And we know the system isn't made for Black people, right? So like organizations like yourself, right? I believe that's for, to come together. How can we create our own economic system, right? Because whether we put her in there or any white people like the guy in Virginia, they're all the same when it comes to us. So that's my statement.
We're going to talk about the guy in Virginia a little later, the governor of Virginia. Pierre, the question that we were asking, I think that you joined our live stream. The question we were asking is, what are your thoughts on your general thoughts on Kamala Harris?
Okay. Well, peace out there for everybody. Can you hear me okay? Yes? The sound is good?
Yeah, we good.
Okay, good, thanks. Okay. My thoughts on Kamala Harris. I don't know a whole lot about her. I did look a little bit into her background. From what I've seen, she doesn't seem to be very progressive at all, although that's what she seems to be claiming. But I will say I don't think there is a candidate that Black people should give their vote to as of yet. At this point, our best strategy would be to hold our vote. It would at least let both parties know that it's not an automatic thing, and we do demand something in return for our vote other than, just saying that we voted. I think we've been misled to think that going to vote is something we have to do, so we waste our vote. I believe, as Malcolm X believed, that it's better to hold your vote than to waste your vote, because as you waste your vote, as we've seen, the Democratic Party has gotten so comfortable to they don't even basically think to try to convince us for the vote because it's theirs, and they know it. So they almost become even worse than the other party, which is why now we have some people saying they want to vote Republican, because the Democratic Party has been that bad. The problem with that is the Republican Party, is no better. So I think our strategy now would be to hold our vote, because we can't pledge our vote to any candidate who has at first have some type of radical plan, not progressive, but radical, meaning something that would significantly change the direction the country is going as far as race relations and racism. We haven't even got a candidate yet that would publicly even state that they will address these issues. And the only candidate I saw, ironically, was I can't remember her name, but she's the Jewish white lady that said that she would give reparations. I don't know much about her, but I just read, like, that's literally the only candidate that actually mentioned an issue that of ours is not even Black. So my take is, I don't necessarily have a take specifically on her, but her or Booker or whoever it is, just because they're Black. I think people are waking up when they're saying, we're not just going to vote for you anymore just because you're Black. We went that route already, and we're back where we started, where we were, if not worse. And a lot of folks are mad because they're just so loyal to the Democratic Party, and You know, so when they throw somebody out there, that just because they like them, for instance, like you said, oh, well, she dances like black people, like, so I'm gonna vote for her. Like, that's how ridiculous we are with our vote. So, I mean, to keep it short, yeah, I would say we hold our vote. We use it strategically, and we focus on, you know, being independent. And not you know, trying to join one of these parties.
And I like where you went with that the idea, should we hold our vote? You know, before I go there, I'll just say my general thoughts. You know, from what I viewed on her platform, or really on her prior policies, it does seem very reminiscent of a Hillary Clinton. What I mean by that is that when it's convenient for you, you will throw black people under the bus. When it's okay, as far as your political base, to do certain things, you'll do it. But whenever there's a change in circumstances, you'll go completely the other way. Now, realistically, we know that black people in America, any politician that gets elected has the potential to be flaky. Politicians do not advocate your point of view. They do not advocate your political your political ideology just because that's what they believe. Oftentimes, they don't really care about your political ideology, but they are willing to align themselves with the political ideology when they actually see something political to gain from it. So, for example, we know with Kamala Harris, you know, one thing with her, she's very much a supporter of Israel. Now, do we think that she just happens to be passionate about the state of Israel, or do we think that it's convenient, politically convenient, to be passionate about the state of Israel, given the fact that Israel has the strongest lobby in the country, in the world, really, and they have the ability to really give you political leverage or end your political career. So obviously, it's not because she just happens to, you know, be so in love with Israel. It's because to do so would have gains for her. So when we think about the Black community, it's not about whether or not she's sincere. We know no politician is going to be sincere, but if we're going to vote for someone, first they do have to have a Black political platform, but that platform has to get pushed from us. And how we push that platform is by being organized, as I said in my video. So it's good that we're calling her to task on her past and calling her to task on, speak on why you did so many horrible things to us, because you're trying to trying to show yourself as being someone who is better than Trump. And frankly, if you were doing these things as a prosecutor, I mean, let's just go through some of the things that she actually did so that we're not being too abstract. You know, there was a few cases, for example, where it was clear as far as there was evidence that these convictions of Black men were actually were false convictions, and she fought to actually uphold these convictions. There's another situation where body cameras were being proposed, I believe, in the state of California. She actually opposed body cameras. There was a situation with truancy. They were trying to criminalize truancy of children, and we know that that would disproportionately affect us. She was pushing to criminalize truancy of children. And if you know anything about truancy, you know that there's a deeper issue going on. It's not just that the parents don't want to send their kids to school. There's a lot of times deeper things going on. So she has a really tough record of being against us. I would say very reminiscent of the Bill Clinton record, whenever he was pushing the crime bill, whenever he was using certain rhetoric to refer to Black people. So we know where she stands as far as the past. Now, if she wants the Black vote, obviously she would have to actually put out policies that would particularly pertain to Black people. And we're very smart now that we are actually criticizing her. And I think that if she doesn't actually apologize for her past, then I think that's going to be the nail in the coffin as far as her ever getting a Black vote. Because if you're going to be unapologetic about it and say, I did what I did, and you know this is what it was, I think we've grown to the point where we are awoke enough that we're not just going to accept that. Now, as I forget, Brother Cato actually brought up, we do have another candidate who I think personally will probably get more of the Black vote. One, because Cory Booker, we know that Cory Booker is not afraid to identify as being Black. Cory Booker is not afraid to talk directly to Black issues. I would say, you know, we haven't seen him in a presidential race because you know, we don't know how he's going to conduct himself going forward. Because if you know anything about Obama prior to running for the presidency was a very different Obama. So we don't know how Cory Booker is going to change his rhetoric for the presidential election. But as far as previously, he was very okay with being vocal against police violence. He was very okay with, you know, he wasn't a radical by any means, but he was definitely okay with articulating a Black agenda, Black issues, actually speaking directly to the Black community. So based on his past, he is much more posed to get the Black vote than Kamala. So the question is, what will he do going forward? Will Black people be satisfied enough with his previous record that they will accept him as enough as president because they don't want Trump to win, and so they'll vote for him? Or are we going to be consistent and say that we do want a Black agenda? And most importantly, are we going to get organized to demand that Black agenda? So I want to, you know, talk about a point you made, Pierre. So it's 2020, right? Well, this is the Trump election. Should we hold our vote? Should we wait? Should we wait this out and see what happens? Pierre says yes. I've said in my video, I think that it would be more smart to hold your vote until you're organized. What do the rest of you have to say about that? Anyone can jump in.
I'm just gonna say that you know, the last person I voted for was Obama, and during that time, there was a lot of unjust treatment of Black people, you know, out there, and this was covered in the media. A lot of people got shot by police officers. A lot of people got shot by so-called stand your grounders, and you know, that's when I wanted to leave the country, you know, and that's when I started thinking about Africa, and like, you know, I saw its potential, and I wasn't scared to not take part, not participate in the politics of this country. You know, if anything, I wanted to use my rights as a Black person that my ancestors fought for to actually boycott, you know, the politics in America and boycott the presidential elections if there's no fit. If there's no fit candidate that's talking about, you know, something like reparations, if they're not talking about, you know, gentrification, if they're not talking about police brutality, if they're not, you know, favoring us, you know, as longtime citizens of this country, you know, and I will not vote if there's no candidates. And I will be very vocal on why I'm not voting. And you know, I would even go as far as to get others to not vote for people who are against them. And you know, that's as far as that goes. 2020, you know, unless Akon runs, you know, I'm probably not going to be taking place. I do like Bernie Sanders. I do like, you know, one thing I like how he wanted to legalize marijuana, you know, nationally. And this is a crop that, you know, everyone could benefit in. And this economy needs it. And he lost, you know, in the elections, and that was it for me. I was not going to pit Hillary Clinton, and I definitely wasn't going to vote for Trump. So, you know, that's how I feel.
So, you know, and Cato, Frank, Pierre, whichever of you want to jump in on this. What if there are no candidate, or no, I'm sorry. What if there are supposedly candidates for us? Meaning, what if Cory Booker does articulate a Black agenda, but at the same time, we're still in a condition that we are in right now, which is that we're not organized. You know, is there any meaning in that? And if we still don't have an economic base, is there still meaning in voting under those circumstances, when you look at previously, you know, whenever Democrats actually were doing things pertaining to the Black community, the organization level is very different. For example, I don't think President Johnson would have passed the Voter Rights Act, the Fair Housing Act, all the acts that was passed under him. I don't think he would have pushed those if the Black community wasn't organized at that time, even though he ended up, and the funny thing about President Johnson, when you find out, he was actually a avowed racist. I mean, he called the Civil Rights bill or Civil Rights Act, he called it the nigger bill. So this is to go to show you that maybe the issue isn't candidates, good or bad. Maybe the issue is actually what the condition of the community as far as how organized are we to push our own agenda. So, you know, that's my question. I see Frank got booted out, so I'm sure he'll come back in. But Cato or Pierre, what if there are candidates who are going to articulate a Black platform, but the Black community is not organized in order to push their own agenda?
All right, can you hear me? You got me? That's a very valid point you just made. And I think you need organizations like yours, right, and other organizations, because you have to have lobbyists. I think you have to have people, right, in Washington pulling for you. And I mean, like a lot of people right now, you hear a lot of people talking about Obama and as far as what he did for the Black community after he was elected. But one thing he did that doesn't get a lot of doesn't get looked at closely, should I say, is with Eric Holder, right? They tried to make bills that would examine, right, police brutality, right, and things that were going on in Ferguson, right, and then they actually passed laws that these things had to be examined on a federal level if someone was killed by the police. And I believe it was under the president we have now, or so-called president, should I say. Can you hear me? You hear me? So that's changed. So, I mean, that might be a little thing, but we have to keep things moving. We have to have a mass movement. You have to have people in your neighborhoods that are basically willing to say, as you said, maybe keep your vote back. You have to force them to do something. If you don't force them to do it, they won't do it.
How about you, Pierre?
I think really it just depends on what you're looking to gain. If you're just looking to gain, if you're looking for Black people to maybe gain a little bit of leverage, okay, maybe you'll vote for a Booker or a Bernie Sanders or somebody like that. Maybe. I just don't look at things that way. You know, I look to tear down the system and for us to be independent. So I don't see any purpose in me voting for a Booker or a Bernie Sanders or anybody that has been put up. I think I make a better statement by not voting for them persons to let them know that this is my stance. I don't, because you're saying you're tough on police brutality. I'm going to vote for you based on you saying, because what we get all the time is people, they say they're going to do things, but they don't do them, right? So Booker can have a great Black agenda with all of these things that he's going to claim to do, or whoever. It doesn't mean it's going to happen, right? For instance, anybody that's running as a Democrat for president, I don't think you can ever align with liberation of Black people, right? For one, you can't. One example is no Democrat. Well, I'm not saying none. There are a few that it has happened. Will denounce the state of Israel, right, or Zionism, right? Because you can't do that and still consider yourself a Democrat. Like, you wouldn't have the support of the party. But that relates to us as well, because Zionism is a part of white supremacy. It's a perfect example of it. We know that the state of Israel is racist. Like we know about this. So it's a conflict, like, and that's the problem. Like being a Democrat or Republican as a black person, you can't really be for the freedom also of black people. Like it's conflicting. So I understand what you're saying. Not like holding our vote is not going to all of a sudden like, change things. But I do think if, what I'm saying, where do we start? Like if it's not one person, two people that say, hey, I'm going to hold my vote, where do we start, even if we're not organized?
Kofi, there's a question directed to you. So this is one of your brothers from BAIO. Fatty Black is what his name is on YouTube. I'm sure.
Yeah, I know.
He has a different name, but he recognized you from BAIO, and he was wondering, what is your perspective on this? So the idea of voting in the 2020 election and all of that, from the perspective of being here without our own host nation. Do you want to give a perspective on that before we move on?
Well, pretty much, whether we vote or not, we're coming out of an era that, wiped the black economy out. It was the war on drugs era. It was the so-called war on crack, where they pretty much did this similar thing to what they did to the Chinese, to what the British did to the Chinese during the Opium Wars. They flooded our communities with drugs and it was to back the Nicaraguan war, to overturn the elections in that country and continue to treat a lot of the Central and South American countries as, banana, republics, banana plantations, where they just take the resources out and they, throw in their proxy leaders. There's they're puppet governments, and we're in shock right now. We're divided in America, meaning we're so integrated into the United States of America, is that we don't really know who we are. And our employers, if we resist, if we say something, opposing to their beliefs, we risk, losing our jobs. And then if we lose our jobs, then we risk, losing our homes. And if we lose our homes, then we risk, being out there on the streets and starving, because there's no green book. There's no green book of, the old, where if you were a musician, or even if you were a president, or if you're someone prominent from an African country and you came to the United States during the 1950s and 60s, you could stay at certain hotels. You could go to certain restaurants. You could go to all black restaurant. You go to all black hotel. You go into a all black community, and there was no fear of not having people, as a black person. And now, we don't have that anymore. If you tuned into the Killer Mike documentary, he on Netflix, he wanted to do this experiment to where he was going to buy everything, nothing but black owned. He was going to just try to survive off of black owned everything. And he had to sleep on a bench. He had to sleep on a park bench, and he had to damn near starve himself until he found a black owned farm. And that's where we're at in America. And a lot of us are on our way out. The mass migration back to Africa is already happening because of this. It's a matter of life and death, and where your legacy is how your legacy is going to begin and end in the 21st century. And as far as I'm concerned, you know, we're living a legacy of old, of chattel slavery. It is just a sophisticated version of it. And I feel that's where the BAIO is at, the Black African Organization, the Black African Infrastructure Organization. You know, we believe in land, infrastructure, and nationhood, and we can only do it in a nation, or we can only do it on a continent to where everyone identifies with us. You know, we all look alike. So if we're doing for that nation, for that country, everything is going to be passed down to the generations of many Black people to come ahead. But in this country, we create things, we invent things. We're always changing. It seems like it always just ends up in white hands and is white owned. And then we're being thrown under the bus in our own country, in our so-called, you know, United States of America. And you know.
Yeah, and you know, I just want to say, you know, FAL does support BAIO and any Pan-Africanist, Black nationalist, any pro-Black organization. You know, one of our big passions is that we do want to see a united front, and that's probably what makes us a little different than other organizations, is that we're trying to actually find a way to organize all Black organizations, but also organize ourselves as an organization. So Kofi is the is a leader inside of BAIO, so it's really good to hear that perspective also. So we're going to pivot to what's going on in Venezuela. I did a video on this last week, and the situation has just gotten more and more appalling as far as how the West has been conducting themselves. Obviously, you know, this organization is devoted to Pan-Africanism. So we don't just want to talk about Venezuela the typical way. We want to talk about it as how does it, as it would relate to African people, African nations. So to give a brief summary, if anyone doesn't know, Venezuela has been an enemy of the United States for a long time. You know, before the current President Maduro, it was Hugo Chavez, who, you know, was a lot like Fidel Castro in that it was he had a socialist agenda, and he was not going to bow to the United States. And so that makes you an enemy of the United States. Anytime with capitalism, if you declare yourself socialist, a socialist country, and that means that you're going to, first of all, spread the ideology that no one should be poor in your country. No one, when you have money, why is it that there's such a big difference between the rich and the poor? Why not try to find a way to uplift the poor? Anytime that ideology comes into direct conflict with white supremacy, because the premise of white supremacy is that we should think about ourselves. We should not think about our community. We should not think about the masses of the people. And if we are thinking about the poor, then that means that we're going to lessen our ability to self-enrich ourselves. And so that ideology in itself is seen as an enemy to white supremacy, but not just the ideology, the idea that Venezuela has told the United States, you know, we're going to control our oil. And if you know anything about the United States, it depends on the natural resources of other countries. Oil is a major natural resource. Obviously, there's tons of natural resources, but that's one that's very vital to the United States economy, because the more and more it expands, the more and more airplanes need oil, the more and more automobiles need oil. The oil industry is always going to be, I would say, the most coveted of the natural resources, because it essentially keeps this engine of the United States running. Now, as far as Venezuela, as I said, it has been an enemy of the U.S. because they have basically said, we're not going to bow to your will. We're not going to let you cheat our people out of what should be theirs. And it's taken an admirable stance. So when we think about African leaders, there's not any, you know, left right now who are taking that stance. But in the future, if we do have, and I do believe that as we continue to grow our consciousness, as we continue to develop our understanding of the use of actually being Pan-Africanist, of being self-reliant, I do think that you'll see more leaders start to emerge on the continent who will not want to bow to Western policies, will not want to adhere to colonialism and neocolonialism. And so in the future, if you have that situation, what would happen if the same thing that the United States is doing to Venezuela, they did to the African countries? So with Venezuela, you know, you have Maduro. He not only has been very adamant that he's not going to bow to United States imperialism. But as I said, I think the reason why they're going so hard against Venezuela right now is because for the oil exchange, they wanted to exchange their natural resources in a different currency than the US dollar. If you know anything about oil, the oil industry, for the most part, it's exchanged with the US dollar. So if countries start turning away and saying, no, we want to use a different currency, that disadvantages the United States, because they've always had a monopoly on that part of the industry. So Venezuela, which is a very energy-rich country, said, we're going to change the currency to something called the petro. A few months after this, here we are right now, where Donald Trump and his cronies, and you know, it's not just a Republican thing. Let me say that, because you'll see a lot of Democrat politicians also supporting the U.S. overthrow of Maduro. But they've decided that they're no longer going to acknowledge the current president that has been elected by the people of Venezuela. They're not going to acknowledge him as president. Instead, the United States picked another guy who they're going to acknowledge as president. This dude has not had an election. He has not been voted in by his people. Instead, the United States favors him because they like him more than Maduro, and they know that they can actually control this leader. And not only has the United States backed this guy, the European Union has. They just released a official declaration that they're going to recognize this other person as being the president of Venezuela. Canada has. A lot of the Latin American countries, which are capitalist, which are basically the underlings of the United States, have also recognized this leader. Who hasn't recognized him is China, Russia, and obviously Cuba wouldn't recognize him. And I think China and Russia actually are significant, because if anyone could possibly make the U.S. back down, it's not just China and Russia, but if China and Russia were to join forces and actually say, no, you need to back down, that would scare the hell out of the United States, because we know that those are two very powerful nations, especially China as far as economics. So, but to get to the gist, this new kind of way of doing things that is being done by the Trump administration, and it's being done out in the open, of regime change. How would African countries learn best from this situation, and how should they respond to such threats from the United States? Because again, the second we have a Black leader who rises up inside of the African continent and says, we're not going to bow to the US will, if you especially pick a country like Congo, imagine you have an actual president that's going to say, no, we're not going to give you our resources. We're not going to allow you to keep raping our country. And if they try this same tactic of recognizing someone else as president, even though that person hasn't been elected, how do we prepare ourselves for this type of situation? Let's see, Pierre Arcado, do you want to say something?
Yeah, real quick. I'm gonna answer that, but I wanted to add, because I read, I can't remember his name, but the guy that's claiming to be president, I read his op-ed in New York Times, I think it was, and I don't know how true this is, but his claim was that because he's the president of the National Assembly, I believe it is, in the Constitution, it says when there's not an acting president, the president of that assembly assumes president until they can legally elect someone. So he's claiming that Madro, I think his name is, he's claiming that he was not legally elected because of some technicality with the date. Like the date for him to be reelected had passed. So he's saying that his election was not legal. So I didn't know that, so I just wanted to make sure that I don't want to put that out there for you all. I don't know how true that is. You know, I don't have any type of connection to know about the Constitution or that situation. But with that being said, this is gonna be a war. This is what this is going to be. This is going to be a war because Trump's not backing down, and the president of Venezuela is not backing down. So this is going to be a war. Just like Vietnam and all the other wars, you know, a war for white supremacy. Now, how do the African nations avoid this is a military, really, a united military. This is why we need, this is why I'm a proponent for the United States of Africa, or whatever you want to call it, because we need to look at Africa as one state. That way, you can't pick on individual countries. You know, when we have a United States of Africa with a united military, they, you know, that they're done. There's nothing they can do. Like you can't just come in, because this is what they do and what they always did, to divide and conquer. You know, put us against each other, separate us, and then get that one country like this. Although Venezuela, from what I hear, is a very racist country. I don't know. Still, as an African nation, you can't, you know, you would have to still be on their side in this situation, because I feel like it's the side of justice, you know, and it's the same thing that they're fighting right now, a lot of nations in Africa. So yeah, that's my take on it. The only way I really think that's the only way we're going to stop it, because they're going to keep doing these type of situations in Venezuela to African nations forever if they don't unite, you know, and build, more than anything, a military, because that's what it's going to come down to. The American military that's going to outpower whoever they come up against.
So Kato, what are your thoughts? How should African nations respond to what is going on in Venezuela?
First, I'm in agreement with him. We do need a United States of Africa, right? No doubt about it. And the only way to solve the solution, I believe, is through Pan-Africanism, right? And it may not happen in my lifetime. I mean, I think we have to look at it as a process, because people are brainwashed all over, whether it be in what we call the States or whether it be in Africa or wherever they are in the world, right? Black people have been brainwashed. When we look at Venezuela and what's going on there, what we're looking at is imperialism, and what we're looking at is the economic situation, right? So it's about, when you talk about changing the currency, you're affecting European colonization, right? That's what that is. That's the way they control, through their dollars, through their paper money. So when you look at Africa, for example, during the period of colonization, paper money was introduced. So before that, they had currency such as gold. Salt was even highly valued at times. You have salt, you had bartering. And so, right, these were part of an economic system that was already set up within the African civilization. Once Europeans came in and colonized Africa, forced paper money on them, which is, paper money is really trash, really. It's worthless, right? The Europeans control the gold, right? Once you control the gold, if the paper money, if you burnt today, they still have all the gold. So they went into Africa and started controlling all the gold mines. So again, you need a United States of Africa. You need a military. You need one military. And even those who are Pan-Africans, I believe, they have to take a look at themselves sometimes. I'm not sure who it was. It was someone that I watched on, I believe, one of your channels on Facebook. And the man, he was very sharp. I can't think of his name. He was really sharp. And I guess he had some type of school, or went different states and had different schools and taught kids like how to say all the names of the African on the African continent of all the countries.
Yeah, yeah.
Right, you recall, right? But then toward the end of it, the lecture, he said he was fully behind China coming into Africa.
He did say that.
Right, and that right there, if you're a Pan-Africanist, right, if you know the history of colonization, right, to me, you're almost selling your people out with that statement right there. Right, if you understand how colonization works. So even people that call themselves Pan-Africanists and that are doing things for Africa and the diaspora around the world, right, just be careful about, Europeans and the way they're interacting with us, because we have to interact with them. Like in the United States, we interact with everyone. But when you have China coming and setting up a military, and the United States have military bases in Africa also, right? You have to know why they're there. They're not there to be your friends. So again, we need our own military. One Africa, and the United States need to be off the African continent, and so does China and Russia also. So that's my stance.
Yeah, something else, that I thought was interesting about the situation in Venezuela is that we can just learn so much just from studying what's going on, because, they're using the same tactic that Gaddafi, that was done against Gaddafi. So if you, obviously, there's always going to be a class of people who don't necessarily agree with your rules. So of course they're, I would say, hyping those people up. You see on the news protests in Venezuela, and we have to also understand that Venezuela, like any other society, has always had a privileged class that kind of wanted things to go back to how they were before. You hear a lot of this with Cuba. You've seen when Fidel Castro died, there were all these parades and all this celebrating, and they were showing people in Miami, oh, the Cubans really didn't like this man. He was really horrible. Then actually, if like on an actual country of Cuba, people were actually mourning, because the privileged class will always see things differently. So for those of you who might be seeing these protests going on the news, understand it's very picked and selected. The same thing was going on in Libya. The mass Libyan people were not for ousting them, but there's always going to be an element of a class of people who do want to oust that leader, and they will highlight those people and they will give them more media play. So that's one tactic that was used with Gaddafi. But the other one that I thought was crazily, just disgusting, that it's happening again, and this is something African countries should learn from, is that Britain, Venezuela had billions of dollars in gold on reserve held in the UK. And Gaddafi also had a lot of assets in the UK. They froze Maduro's assets that were in the UK, Venezuela's assets, and they're telling Maduro, you can't access these anymore because we no longer acknowledge you as being the president. So therefore, Venezuela is cut off from the billions of dollars that they put on reserve in the UK. Same thing happened to Gaddafi. His assets were frozen in the UK. And I think the really important thing that this shows is that African countries, you really need to be careful about your alliances with these Western countries, because the second that you step out of line for them, they will use all these alliances that you've had, the money that you might have been trading, these things that you thought were good deals, they will use those things against you. So moving forward, if when we do have African leaders who do want to see a change in the way things are going, you should act very quickly to make sure you're not in a position of being subjugated to European will. Because if you are, let's say your country has a lot of stake inside of with Germany or UK or France or whatever, understand that once they realize that you are for the people, they're going to use that against you. And you see that a lot, especially with the countries very briefly following the decolonization movement. You've seen, for example, with Nkrumah or with Patrice Lumumba, with a lot of these leaders, that these people, they thought they could be friends with their former colonizers, not realizing that those former colonizers were using that relationship to put them inside of a position of subjugation whenever they stepped out of line. So I think that's a really important part, is that we can learn from, is that we have to be very careful with these alliances that we have with European powers, and make sure that if there is an alliance, that we're in no way beholden to these powers. Should we step out of line, should we have a disagreement, that they could freeze billions of dollars of gold or gold assets and tell us that we don't have access to that anymore. So Kofi, what are your thoughts on that? I know that you've been also you've been, you know, messaging me that you have a lot of thoughts on the Venezuela situation.
Well, I know somewhat of Venezuela. I know with Hugo Chavez before his death that he was cooperating with Cuba President Fidel Castro, and this is just the old game of like economic hitmen. You know, they'll come in, they'll extract your oil, they'll use their technology, and then they say, you know what, you know, this is going to cost a lot. You got to pay for workers, you got to pay for the equipment, you got to pay for maintenance, and pretty much they'll have you take out this huge loan. And if you fail to pay the loan back, then that's when they're going to start to slowly take, they're going to start to slowly take ownership of different vital parts of your nation. And they're going to have you enter into all these deals, and they're going to have you enter to like, you know, banking agreements to where they own you. And once you refuse, that's when they send the hitman after you. They put sanctions on you. They freeze all your accounts, and then they go in and support. They'll support rebel forces, and then they'll just have them take you out. And one thing I'm realizing that it really doesn't take a whole lot. It doesn't take a huge army or a huge military to overthrow a government. It literally takes like 10 people, and they'll capture your government for a while, but it really determines the unification of the people on how long they're going to hold your government, you know, hostage. You know, I think a lot of African countries, let's say Ghana, you know, they've been put on some you know, sanctions, some they restricted, you know, Ghanaians from entering this country from using their visas. You know, they need the government of Ghana need to pay attention to what's going on in all nations in Africa, and they need to like realize that they need to do what Cuba did. They need to plant a lot of food. They need to start, you know, find a way to manufacture on their natural resources as much as possible. This needs to be a national, international thing on the African continent. You know, they need to make sure that they're prepared to go to war with privatized militaries that these corporations use to fight their wars for them. And I know this is going to take a lot, because right now the African countries, they're importing lots and lots of food. So with a trade sanction, you know, that could starve a lot of people on the African continent. So once again, I feel like the deeper in debt you get with the West, you're just digging yourself a deeper hole for your own funeral. And I see a lot of good things happening on the continent. I see a lot of farming taking place. I see a lot of manufacturing, you know, happening. But it's sad that we almost have to get everything from China. Everything is made in China right now. It's almost, it's like we have to get the manufacturing tools from China, only if China allows it, you know. And I seen this person from Togo. They build a 3D printer out of scrap metal, out of junk. And I just feel with that type of focus, with that type of hunger, you know, the African nation could prepare itself more and be more independent. Looking at South and Central America, you know, they're also waking up, and they're taking advantage of the information that's out there. That they're taking advantage of the internet, and they're becoming more and more independent. But the West, you know, Western elites, they're trying to hold on, and it almost seems like we're fighting an alien. It almost seems like we're not even fighting a human anymore. This threat seems very, very alien.
Just to let you know, Kofi, I'm not sure why your camera, I can see you on the live stream, but for some reason on YouTube it's not showing. So maybe you want to try logging out and coming back in, maybe, and hopefully that will fix it. So do we have any final thoughts on Venezuela before we talk about our next topic? Anyone? Okay, so our next topic is, and really our last topic, is what's going on over in, is it Virginia? So Pierre, do you want to introduce this topic?
Yes. I have an article I was going to read from you a second. So this governor of Virginia, I gotta find this topic. I'll give you the name as soon as I find it. They basically, somehow a picture came up of him, I believe when he was in college, maybe, and it was claimed to be him wearing blackface, with blackface on, and another guy was in the picture with looked like a KKK robe. And basically, he's said that he's not going to resign. He claimed that, interesting enough, he claimed that it wasn't him in that particular picture, but that he has worn blackface before. He admitted to it. But yet he said he's not going to resign. So, and he's a Democrat, which is significant. And basically, you know, a lot of people are now calling for his resignation. I mean, I assume eventually he'll have to. I mean, eventually, the more pressure that comes down on him, he will resign. But what are your thoughts on that? Whoever wants to jump in.
I just want to get some clarification. So, I seen the story on CNN, but I didn't get to really watch it. Is it true that he's saying that that the incident was not racist?
I didn't read that he said it wasn't racist. Okay. Let me look again. Well, I'll be reading more into this article as you all give your thoughts. I'll let you know if it comes up.
So, Kato or Kofi, you want to give your thoughts first?
Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, he didn't say it's not racist. He said it's not him, but he said he has worn blackface before. He's going to be forced to resign, right? There's no doubt about it. He's nothing but another George Wallace, if anyone's familiar with him, with George Wallace right from back in the 60s. They all went to black vote no matter what. And so, but that's what, I don't know, it's been about 5-6 years now. And I remember one morning I was watching the news and they were doing an investigation in Florida. And they had a guy in a silhouette. And he said, the FBI was investigating him, and he said that they were part of the KKK. And he said they were everywhere. He said they were judges, they were on the police force, they were lawyers, they were everywhere. I mean, and I didn't think he was lying then. I don't think he's lying now. They're everywhere. I mean, and so, right, for us to think that, all around us, right, within our government, our teachers, this whole society aren't members of the KKK, I think that's a naive stance to take. They are everywhere. This is the society they built. This is the society they want. He just got busted, right? And right. So I mean, but the problem is that there's going to be people that forgive him, but we shouldn't. We shouldn't forgive him at all, anything like that. And they should force him out of office. So that's my take on it.
Let's play with let's say he doesn't resign, and that he's able to continue his political career. What would that mean? What would it mean? Like, to me, if he doesn't resign, and he said, he's not going to resign, I know that, it would be another showing of how weak we are as far as organization, because we know that if a governor was pictured with in a Nazi costume or something like that, we know like it will be very quick. And that's I want to emphasize the issue of organization again, because if we're organized, we can respond to these things quickly, and we can pull, make political pull quickly. So, what does it say, Kofi, if he doesn't resign and he does get to stay a governor inside of Virginia? Kofi, your mic's off.
If he doesn't resign, that just means that the KKK is still alive, and they're not in hiding anymore. Like any monarch of the past, they did everything bluntly. They were kind of out with everything. They didn't really. They wanted you to fear them. They didn't care if you knew such and such, as long as you didn't repeat it, and as long as you didn't oppose them. And if you opposed them, that meant your death. Now, I feel that if he doesn't resign, then that shows a lack of respect for your Black citizens, and it's very clear that this is this is a white racist country. It just declares it. And what Black people need to realize is that they need to start to gather up all their resources and start to come together and realize that they're on their own. I think this governor should resign, and I think he should go further in explaining our trying to explain, how deep rooted in his racism he is, and why, why are racist white Americans and why are white Americans are nationalists? Why do they fear and why do they hate Black people so much? There has to be like a reason. It goes back to slavery, when we got freed, and when we would build our towns. We would build our towns bigger and better than any white American, because it's simple. They weren't the ones that were slaves, so we had skills. And that meant that if you're a poor white person, you would probably have to do business with a Black person. You would probably have to do business with a Black town, and soon their children would even start to integrate into Black society, and they just wasn't having that. And there's the racism of this country. It's deep rooted in European you know, European powers, pretty much, if their resources that they're taking from Africa, if it started to reverse, if Africans started to take advantage of their own resources, that means that, you know, their currency wouldn't mean anything. They wouldn't be able to make money off of their own money, and their societies would start to decline unless they themselves would, you know, leave Europe and actually live in Africa with Africans, you know, and in time turning their white skin into black, you know. That's where the racism is coming from, and I wish that was said. I wish Ralph Northern would just explain why did it come to that point, and why did they fear and hate Black people.
You know, before we close out, you know, I was just wondering, there was a whole incident. I know we're talking a lot about the KKK. There was a whole incident, you know, over in Chicago with Jussie Smollett. Now, I haven't spoken on this incident. One reason is because the facts are not out yet. There's a lot of people who thinking maybe what he's reported is not exactly what transpired. I don't like to speak prematurely on situations, but let's say, you know, what he was saying was correct. That, you know, he was beat up by some Trump supporters who said this is MAGA country, and put a noose around his neck. And, you know, I know it sounds far-fetched for some people, but let's just say, like, if what he's saying is true, and we see a lot of different expressions of white supremacy growing in this country. So is it true that Trump, you know, really did he awaken a sleeping giant, or is this something that has always been hidden? Because as we've talked about with this governor, he's been a Democratic governor. He's been governor, I don't know for how long, but this has not been something that's been outed about him. And he's been allowed to exist inside of a political sphere. And while Virginia certainly does have a racist, you know, element, Virginia also has a progressive element, particularly when you get closer to the DC area. So, you know, he was able to exist inside of that atmosphere and continue on with his political career. So he was, you know, in plain sight, but I guess hiding, you know, a lot of his past as far as, you know, what things that he felt like he could engage in. So is it that with Trump that things are actually getting worse, or do we have a lot of people in the closet who are already of that mindset that basically just came out?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's exactly what it is. I mean, people felt this way all the time. It's just now they feel safer doing it. I mean, we have a white supremacist as the president of this country. Like, there's no doubt about that. I mean, you know, he just because he doesn't say it out loud doesn't mean it's not true. Like, so when we have a white supremacist as the president of this country, you know, the country's going to take on that. Like, you know, why shouldn't I be this way? It can't be wrong. Our president is a white supremacist. What's telling me that not to do it? You know, in fact, that would encourage it more than anything. So I think it's, yeah, kind of like, you know, like you said, awakening the sleeping giant. Like, it's always been around. And now people are just, you know, they're a little more brave to do it because they feel like they have that power behind them. And also now, you know, in this age, you get a lot more information. So I do think we're just seeing a lot more of it now. I think a lot of these things were still going on before Trump was even president. A lot of these hate crimes was happening. We're seeing them more now because of both social media and whatnot. And also, since Trump has gotten in, I absolutely believe that it's given racists more courage to do it, or to show it, I should say.
Do we have any closing thoughts before we close out this live stream?
Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just want to say, man, this has always been there, and we have to realize we can't keep saying that we have to figure out why they do not like us. So we're looking at slavery. People like to look at that 400-year window, what they call slavery, right? European slavery. But before that, you had 1,000 years of Islamic slavery, right? And before that, you can go all the way back 5,000-6,000 years to Euro Asians crossing the Mediterranean, being at war with African people. Right, then going up into Greece and Rome, right, with them invading Africa, right. So this has been something, right, that has been going on forever. And what we have to understand is that there are actually two kinds of racism, right. There is Germanic racism and Latin racism. So Germanic racism is based on color, based on race, and everything based on black and white, right. Whereas Latin racism and Germanic racism is the Germans, Britain, Belgium, for example, right? And then you have the Latin racism, which is based on culture. Our culture is superior to yours, right? So now you have Spain, Portuguese, right? And all these things where they're saying, oh, well, we'll mix with you, but you'll integrate into our culture because our culture is higher than your culture, right? So either way, right, the United States has and always has had a mixture of both. So what the United States is a tripartite system. So in a tripartite system, they control you politically, socially, and economically, right? And that's what we are in the United States. We are controlled in those three phases. Right? And until we learn, right, that we need movements like Pan-African movements across the globe, right, and to come together, right, and it may not be within our lifetime, but you can make little steps within your lifetime. And then it may be, you never know, when one great leader amongst the Pan-Africanist movement, maybe you, right, will come out, right, and change, right, a whole lot, right? You just never know. So that's my take on it. We need to really start concentrating on us as Black people across the globe and not worrying about what they think and feel about us.
Absolutely. Kofi, any closing thoughts? Or
what I would like to just close out with, read, learn your history. I was just reading this book called Between the Cold Forest and the Salty Seas by a Liberian. He's actually one of the descendants of Americans that came from the Caribbean, and his family, migrated they repatriated to Liberia. His name is C. Patrick Burroughs, and he wrote this book, and it teaches you how a lot of the Black people you see in West Africa today, they came from the Sahara. The Sahara wasn't always desert and like dry like it is today. It was filled with forests, rivers, and plenty of like wildlife. And some would even say we came from Israel, which was also considered Africa at the time. We were coming from ancient civilizations in Ethiopia, in Egypt, and these Black civilizations were at one point very monolithic, and due to the climate change, they made their way over to West Africa. Learn your history, and you have a choice. You could stay in the United States, and you could be a part of this very toxic nation, or you could cleanse yourself of this nation by just returning your lineage back to where it was originally at. And I think that's something to actually look forward to, because if you're existing in the United States and you're thinking about living here and having children here, the future really doesn't seem bright. When you start to think of traveling to another continent where there's a majority of Black people just like yourself, you're gonna start to just live better and become a better person just with that thought alone. And nothing could discourage you here in the States under such, circumstances. That's what I want to close out with. And, I'd like to thank everyone for watching. And, once again, I do the content. I share a lot of content of the FAL. I'm a chairperson of the FAL. I'm forgetting the title. I do public relations for the FAL, and I also do public relations for the BAIO. And I just want to bring like-minded people together, and that's my mission. Thank you.
Pierre, you have any closing thoughts?
No, sorry.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you, Brother Cato, for joining us. Again, if you're a member of FAL and you have a voice, we want to hear your voice. So please, send us an email and let us know that you want to be on one of our future live streams. So thank you all for listening, and I'll look forward to reading your comments, and we'll see you all on another live stream.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.